And we are live. I've got this little routine that happens as soon as I go live to make sure that we're actually in the Facebook group, because I've done that before and had a lovely long conversation and we weren't in the Facebook group. So I'm just double checking and we are. Welcome, Vision Builders community, to our evening interview of Blossoming Women. Tonight, I have with us Trish Tucker-May, and it was a lovely surprise to find out that Trish is actually in Australia. I thought she was going to be in the UK. So welcome, Trish, and thank you so much for being with us this evening.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you. I'm coming live to you from my mum's sewing room, so I hope that's okay.
It's perfect. It's lovely to get all the different locations as women come in. We get little sneak peeks inside all sorts of fascinating places in people's homes. So I find it's much more visually interesting to watch than just kind of, being in studio style. It's fun. It's fun. So, Trish, you have got an enormously long list of things that you do and qualifications. I was looking, there's aromatherapy and Reiki and nutrition and complementary cancer therapy. There is so much there, but I think in a nutshell, it's nutrition and gut specialist. You've got a brand new book, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But I'm very, very excited to really look at your story and your journey. So, as I have done with all of our gorgeous women who have come into this series, it's taken us back on a little journey back in time. And what I want to do is just have a sense of who you were when you were a gorgeous teenager, ready to launch yourself into womanhood. When you were leaving school, what was in your mind? What did you imagine you were going to be doing?
Okay, so at the age of 14, I was hyperallergic and I had already been on medication for a long time since birth. I was born in really underweight. I'm a twin. I've got a twin brother. And he was really fit and healthy, and he went home with mum and I stayed behind
Right.
for 3 weeks. So I was quite small and my lungs were undeveloped, and I was poorly as a kid. I was really always sick. First person to get sick in the house, coughs, colds, wheezy, sneezy, asthmatic. So at 14, I felt ugly. I felt wheezy. I felt like I couldn't get my breath. I was constantly sick.
Yeah.
I couldn't run. I started to play around with diet. I had sort of intuitively given up dairy and was still eating a bit of wheat, but I was told at the age of 14 that I was going to have to be on medication for the rest of my life because I was hyperallergic. Like I'd had the skin tests, and they just went, "Oh, this is ridiculous. You're hyperallergic. You're allergic to so many things. We're just going to stop testing you, and here you go. Here's the medication. You'll be on that for the rest of your life."
Yeah. So not just foods, like things in the environment as well.
Dust, cats,
Yeah.
different types of food, just all sorts of sensitivities.
Yeah.
Interestingly, my mum, I think, also intuitively found our way to a kinesiologist who said that I was very low in magnesium, and sort of started to play around with a little bit of supplements. I can always remember going into a health food shop and just feeling like, oh my God, this is exciting. I wanted to explore some natural remedies. I loved being in the health food shop. I loved exploring smoothies and juices. And my mum, at the age of, for my 14th birthday, she gave me a juicer.
Wow.
And a blender. And I remember the first time I used the combination of the juicer and I made a smoothie, and I didn't put the lid on properly, and the smoothie went all over the kitchen. I've been juicing since I was 14.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be a dietitian at school. I actually dabbled also in care, like in working with Camp Quality, which was kids with special needs.
Yeah.
And I really love that. Like I volunteered through the Girl Guides, but I was teased as a Girl Guide. I felt embarrassed a
Yeah.
lot. I didn't feel like I fit in. I lived right out of town. I went to a Catholic school, but I wanted to be a dietitian.
Yeah.
Now, in year 10, I did some work experience at the Taree Hospital. We're on the mid-north coast of New South Wales. And I was placed in the basement for a week filing patient records. And I thought, boring. I don't want to be a dietitian anymore. I had no access to a dietitian, you know, it just was boring.
Yeah.
And in year 12, I was with the careers advisor. He said, oh, you know, you're really good at 3-unit economics. You should go and do commerce. And not realizing that I had to do accounting all the way through and a commerce degree, and I failed my first accounting exam. That was a big shock. I just thought, oh my God, I can't do accounting. I was crap at maths. My twin brother was awesome at maths, but I was rubbish.
Yeah.
And so I thought, right, now I need to change my degree. So I changed my degree to marketing and economics.
Yeah.
And then by the time I left university, I really, really, really wanted to have a juice business. I wanted to have, this is long before Boost and all that sort of thing. I wanted to have a juice business, like fresh pressed juice. I loved making juices. So that was really interesting. Left uni, and then all I wanted to really do was travel. I wanted to get out of Foster. I wanted to go to Spain. I wanted to go to Europe. I just wanted to go anywhere but Foster. And I worked hard, saved my money, had a few hiccups with meeting the wrong sort of guys along the way, had major setbacks in financials, and finally saved my money and left Australia at the age of 26 with view to just traveling the world.
Yeah.
And I did. I spent 2 years traveling on my own,
Yeah.
backpacking, as we do, us Aussies do, in Europe and the UK and Africa and a bit of the States, and lived in Austria for 2 seasons in St. Anton, and lived in Copenhagen for 2 summers. Amazing. In my second season in St. Anton, I broke my neck snowboarding.
Trish.
Actually, when I was 14, go back to 14. At the age of 14, I stepped out from behind the school bus. My twin brother was 1 step behind me. My dad was standing outside the garage, and I was hit by a car. So I had a hospitalization, and you know, so was this, and then, you know, 26 broke my neck, the 3rd and 5th vertebrae in 2 places. And then, like, I came back to Australia after traveling for 2 years, moved to Melbourne, love Melbourne, centre of my universe in the late 90s.
Yeah.
And then moved to Sydney, and I was working in financial services at the time. So I sort of got given jobs. Like I wanted to have a juice bar outside Donovan's restaurant in St Kilda Beach, and I was going to open on St Valentine's Day 1999.
Yes.
And I got a phone call from Gail Donovan the night before I was due to open. And she said, you think you're too naive. You haven't even got your insurance sorted. You're not doing it. It was like a little shop sort of kiosk outside her restaurant. So major setback.
Yeah.
Next job opportunity, I got headhunted and I worked in insurance, which was quite funny, ironic.
Yeah.
And from there I was working in Melbourne, and then I got moved to Sydney.
Yeah.
And then I took up various promotions, like, oh, here you'd be really good at this, here be head of individual solutions, here go and do this, you'll be segment manager for, you know, financial services. And I then took up a role to go to the UK in 2001. And it was a global centre of excellence for the group, and it was like in database marketing. And I arrived in Cheltenham in the UK. So I've got this burning desire to have this juice business, right? But I'm getting sidetracked in the corporate world in financial services and all the lurks and perks of fast car and no life, working ridiculous hours, and working in Cheltenham. And it was interesting because when I got to Cheltenham, there was no juice bars. And I thought, you know, I just sort of discovered personal development in my late 20s and did lots of Tony Robbins stuff and lots of Jim Rohn stuff. And, you know, had this, you know, if anyone asked, have you got a burning desire to do something else with your life? I was always like, yeah, I want to have this juice business. So yeah, here I am in the UK, no juice bars anyway. You know, at this stage there was every kebab shop, there was a juice bar. Some fruit and veg shops in Australia had juice bars. You know, they were starting to pop up everywhere.
Yeah.
And again, I think this was around about the Boost time.
I was going to say, when did Boost land in Australia?
Yeah, around about that time, I think.
Yeah.
Just as I was leaving, Boost had started to kick off, I think.
Yeah.
And so I get to Cheltenham, no juice bars, and I did another couple of years in corporate. But what was happening in financial services at that time in the UK, there was lots of restructures.
Right.
And a lot of the directors that I was working with, some of them were starting to get knocks on the door on a Sunday afternoon saying, don't come into work, you haven't got a job, sort of restructures. And I was like, oh, and the other thing that happened was I was working in North Sydney, and I had an office overlooking the Sydney Harbour Bridge and the Opera House. And I ended up in the UK, and anyone who's listening from the UK, you will understand. I was in Cheltenham, but the majority of my work was either Fareham or Leeds, and I was doing 500 miles a week on the motorways. And and a lot of my work ended up being in Swindon. So I was in this open IT factory, open floor plan IT factory for a financial services company overlooking the Swindon railway station, which is so ugly. And I thought, how did I end up here?
Yeah.
You know, how did I really end up here doing something I'm not really passionate about? And what I'm really passionate about is juicing and health. And at the same time, my health was getting worse and worse. Like, so I had this asthma, I had shingles, I had candida, I was getting these massive headaches. I'd had shingles twice. And at the age of 32, so 2 years into the corporate world in England, I had peaked in 1 year, I'd peaked at 12 anaphylactic episodes in 1 year. So that was 12 hospitalizations, or rides in an ambulance, or overnight stays or 3-night overnight stays in hospital.
Yeah. Because
my allergies and my anaphylaxis and my asthma was just kicking off. So that was like, you know, and I look back on that and I think my body was shouting. Like, my body was just not like tiny symptoms, it was screaming. Yeah. I intuitively found my way to a nutritionist who is also a kinesiologist, and she specialized in allergies and parasites. She diagnosed me with high candida, leaky gut, parasites, and Lyme's disease. Yeah, right. So prior to that, I would never put my respiratory challenges down to compromised gut health. Yeah. Now I totally understand that all disease starts in the gut. Yeah. And from that time, I completely changed my career in financial services. Yeah. And I focused on the juice business, and I began studying functional nutrition and the microbiome and how to get the body working optimally. Because I worked with her for 6 weeks, and I went in with a box full of medication. Yeah. You know, I was carrying an EpiPen, I had Ventolin, Atropine, Beclofort, puffers, antihistamines, you name it. Yeah. And working with her for 6 weeks, I'm so happy to say that I've been medication free now for 22 years. She got you off everything in 6 weeks. Yeah. Oh, wow. So we did zapping, we did tinctures, we did, you know, oh, look, the candida. So she said to me, so I just started the juice business. Yeah. And decided to leave corporate world, started the juice business. My first festival was Glastonbury Festival. Yeah. And I'd had these big anaphylactic episodes. And she said, okay, 6 weeks, no fruit. And I'm like, what? I've come to a nutritionist and you're telling me I can't have fruit, and I've got now a juice business. And she said, you're handling fruit from all over the world. It's triggering your Lyme's disease. It's triggering the parasites. All the fruit that you're having is triggering the candida, and it's causing these massive anaphylactic episodes. Right. It's in my mind, and so I want to ask, curiosity, were you a Caesar baby? No, but I was second born, see? You were second born. So my twin brother would have got all the vaginal mucosal stuff. because I stayed behind in a humidity crib, so he went home with mum. I stayed behind for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So he was getting all that first milk. Mum was expressing bringing milk into me, but obviously that he would have been getting a lot of the first milk, and he would have probably got a lot of the vaginal fluid, like that first bit of the vaginal fluid. I would have got some, but the thing is with the parasite, when I was diagnosed with a hookworm, she said you would have had that from birth. So the parasites, you know, you inherit the microbiome of your parents, but you will also inherit spores, flukes, and parasites from your parents.
Yeah.
And I would have had that from birth. And she said, and that's residing in your lungs, and that's giving you that feeling of breathlessness.
Is it? I mean, just for any women that are listening, I asked the question because there's a big link between children that are born by a cesarean section because they miss out on that inoculation. Is that the right word?
Correct.
The microbiome during the natural birth process. So it's just, I was interested if that was the case, but I hadn't actually heard about this case with twins or multiple births. And so is that quite common with a second?
I don't know if that's quite common, but when you look at, like, parasites will always go to the weaker area of the body, and because I was weaker than my brother, then that went to me, I guess. Just is what it is. But how life-changing is that to realize that, that candida, the hookworm, and once we got to that root cause and we killed off all of that overgrowth, and now I have to be careful. Like, I'm diligent and I'm careful, and I will do regular cleanses, and I will regularly go back to my kinesiologist, and she will zap, and she will go deeper, and we do like a maintenance on my car. Like, I will do a maintenance on myself, and I'll go in and she'll check. And often when I come back from Australia, she goes, "Oh, you picked up this, that, and the other. What have you been doing?" We lived on a property, we had tank water, or eating raw fish, or, you're always exposed to the microbiome, the environment, the bacteria. And so I always pick something up. I'm traveling, as we do, so.
While I think of it, for anyone that's watching live, I've got a new microphone, and I meant to ask at the beginning, just let me know if there's any problem with the sound. I haven't seen any comments, but just let me know if there is. So obviously there is a long journey. So you got to, what did you say, 26, or where were you when you started going to the kinesiologist? And
32. So at 32, I peaked at 12 anaphylactic episodes, and that was my life-changing experience. So at this stage, I'm already running the juice business. I'm doing festivals and events, and I'm fortunate enough in my second season to realize that we were doing Edinburgh Fringe. And then we were also then asked to do the Womadelaide Fringe. And then all of a sudden we realized we had 2 seasons back to back. And we started to travel 6 months, the UK, 6 months in Australia. And then we continued to do that for 19 years and 2 kids along the way. So it was phenomenal lifestyle business while I was studying, while I was learning more about nutrition and serving juices at festivals and events and retreats, and seeing that amazing health transformation when people nourish themselves in a good way, but in extreme conditions, like 40 degrees at WOMAD, or if anyone's been recently to WOMAD, oh my goodness, it reminded me of having my 3-month-old and my mum looking after my 3-month-old, and him panting in the middle of the night because it was 42 degrees or something. We had 12 days over 40 degrees. It was like, oh my goodness. So lucky enough to have the juice bar on the road for those 20 years. And then of course COVID sort of changed all of that. So that's another very interesting chapter of my life.
So tell me, were you in the UK through COVID?
We left here for our last season. I sold my juice bar business in Australia in February 2020.
Right.
Which was just another intuitive. It was just time to let that go. and sort of begin to change our life and settle down a little bit because the kids were getting older. My eldest son was talking about going to high school, staying in high school. So luckily I sold the business February 2020, and we were on the last flight out of Vietnam in March 2020, and then went into the UK, and we would have had probably the most lucrative busy season that we would have ever had that year. And of course it all disappeared with like a house of cards, just boom, 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 one after the other. Events were getting cancelled. My husband also performs. He's a professional clown. So we were lucky enough to, to have this dual life where he's half Australian as well. And the kids have got both passports. So we were coming and going, and all of our business was entertainment, big events, lots of people, all face to face, and of course it all disappeared overnight. Because
April was when things really, my husband is South African, and he had flights booked to go to Cape Town in April, and we were right on the fence. It was like, do you go, not go? And thank goodness we pulled the pin, because it would, I don't know when he would have got back again.
So whoever thought it was a good idea to write a book about the menopause while homeschooling my teenage children through a global pandemic. I'm sure I put a lot of the recipes and the practical steps to the test.
Yeah, absolutely. So have you got a practice now? What is that?
I do, yes. I have a clinical practice. So I was running that. I was setting that up while I was finishing off the juice bar. I had some clients in it started really 7-8 years ago. I started seeing clients, and I was doing some workshops. Like I'd do day retreats, I'd do weekend retreats where I would be serving all the food, and I would be inspiring people, teaching people about juicing and fermenting and raw food and nutrition. And that's where I really enjoyed my space, like in public events or in groups of women, maybe 30 women at a time over a weekend, or speaking at festivals, yoga festivals particularly, where I would be doing the catering, and I would be very practical, hands-on, teaching women to nourish, teaching them about the practical, aspects of juicing and nourishing and cleansing and that sort of thing. And then, of course, global pandemic really I was sort of starting to build online, but primarily at that point I had face-to-face clients and more the retreat side of things.
Right.
And then, of course, I really had to go, okay, got to do a quick pivot here, because being self-employed, you just, it's you don't have much time to go, okay, what are we doing now? So homeschooling the kids, and did the quick, creating more of an online group program and one-to-one clinic out of the UK, and so seeing clients in Australia and in the UK, and very quickly put together a group program. And this, I'd been writing, at this point I was already starting to write the book, and it was interesting. The book started off as a juicing, chakra healing, energy book, and then it morphed into this book about nourishing the gut for the positive menopause. So it sort of had a life of its own over the 7 years, because I was, spending that time really researching the best ways to support my clients. And even my client base started to change. Like it was more about perimenopause, menopause, and the gut, because prior to my transformation, I would have never put my respiratory challenges down to gut health. So that's when I really started to go much deeper into gut health. So then the book had to change as well. Like it changed from the juicing, sort of just juicing and energy and chakras, to more about gut health and all the things that can go wrong.
I think it's easy to forget how new the gut health stuff is, really, for the majority of people talking about it. When I did naturopathy, I graduated in 99. We weren't talking about gut health in 99. It wasn't part of my training. So I think that's, like it is really, it's relatively new in the big picture.
So it is a phenomenal time to be in this environment and in this industry, because the functional nutrition tests that we can get that are available now, it's phenomenal what we can the information that we can gain from blood, saliva, urine, in terms of hormones, in stool tests, that sort of thing. It's incredible.
Yeah. I feel like this is just a by the by, but it's one of those things that the cost of all this stuff is still quite high. Hopefully it'll become something that's more accessible to most people, because I think it's still, it's still inaccessible to a lot of people, unfortunately.
It is. Look, I think it's an incredible investment, and if I totted up what I've spent in my lifetime on my own personal health, but for me, the transformation has been well worth it. But yes, I agree. The functional nutrition tests are an incredible investment, but they're not available to everybody because of the cost.
Yeah.
But I just think it's worth finding the money, especially if you're struggling. Like for me, I had life-threatening, anaphylaxis. So, really prioritizing my health and seeking out the best in private practice was something that I was prepared to do.
It's all perspective, isn't it? If we drive around in a fabulous car but our body's sick, it's kind of, things are off kilter. It's perspective, but it's at the same time, it's just one of those things that unfortunately, until we feel like we're really struggling, it's easy not to prioritize it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I say to my clients, look, the body whispers a long time before it starts to shout. My body was shouting.
Yeah.
But all of my clients, I said, look, pay attention to the whispers, because we can have, we could write down 2 pages of little niggles that are, maybe enough to go to the doctor about, but maybe not really. But when you add them all up, they're all signs of inflammation. They're all signs that the body is not operating optimally. And that's what I really teach, is that we can feel better, we can have better mood, we can have better energy, better sleep, better digestion, and we can have a really positive perimenopause and menopause experience if we do the work. And sometimes it can be the little things that we can tweak that will make such a massive difference to our future, to our health, to our vitality, to our energy.
I think it is just such an important conversation, because the normalizing of hot flushes and all the misery that can come about, and women just going, well, it's just normal, you've just got to put up with it. It's not. It's not. And this is, the more that we can, have this conversation and say, you can actually get through this. I know as soon as I eat the wrong thing or alcohol, but otherwise I don't have hot flushes. It just hasn't been part of my picture at all. So there's lots of things like that we just, I think the mainstream conversation has just said, well, this is just normal. So you just put up with it. You don't sleep, you have hot flushes, you get fat, and it's just.
Yeah, you don't have to do all of those things. The more that you do the work, you focus on the liver, you focus on digestion, you focus on the gut health, the more you will, reduce those symptoms. And I see it again and again, particularly hot flushes. If you're drinking way too much alcohol and caffeine, and you're having too much sugar, then, and you're not sleeping, and you're getting those regular night wakings, or, regular bouts of insomnia or anxiety 3 o'clock in the morning, then, and first thing, look at alcohol, look at caffeine, look at sugar, and change some of those things. And sometimes, like, I know it can be a bit daunting to say to a woman, well, don't drink alcohol, ever, but sometimes it's just 3 lunar cycles or menstrual cycles where you can make those changes, and that will make the world of difference. And your body can reset, and you can have a bit of a deep clean, and then you can, you might be able to moderate those habits. But then, I think it's worth doing the work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was, one of my favorite sayings in the short time that I was in practice, is never say never. As soon as you say never, it's the only thing you want.
Yeah, the aim is not to deprive. The aim is to thrive. The aim is to have a positive experience.
Yeah.
And certainly the aim is not perfection. I say to all of my clients, look, 80-20 rule or 90-10 rule, 80% of the time, if you're nourishing your body well with whole food, real food, beautiful, vibrant, diverse range of vegetables, majoritively, and plant foods, then, and real foods, because that's even difficult these days because of the amount of ultra processed food that is masquerading as food that is not food. If you're doing that 80% of the time, and then 20% of the time you're quite relaxed about things, then that is a great place to start. Or maybe 90-10, and just allowing that little bit of a leeway. We're not aiming for perfection, but you will certainly feel the benefit.
Yeah. I think, I do, I don't know if you know Cindy O'Meara.
I love. She's a mentor of mine. I love her. I've shared the platform a couple of times with Cindy in the UK, actually.
Yeah.
The Thermomix. We did a couple of things together, and love her programs, love her books, got all of her books, love.
So I've known Cindy for years, and she's been on several of my shows as well.
Yeah.
And after I did naturopathy, I then probably had 3 children in 3.5 years, and then another one. And so before I went back to work, I was actually in her first round of her functional nutrition academy that she did.
Amazing, so good.
But I do her fat loss protocol around this time
good
every year. And
so good.
It is always that reset of, this is what it feels like to feel really good, because we forget,
and let go of that inflammation. So
everything just sort of starts to slowly slide, and then we get used to kind of just not being optimal. It becomes the normal. And then if you give yourself the chance to do it, it's like, if you want to do the full thing, it's 40 days or something. It's really, it sounds a lot, but it doesn't take long, and the results are so quick. And then it's just like the vitality, and it's like, oh my gosh.
Yes. And then when you reset, that's why I said to my clients, like, 40 days is a magic number. And also, look, if you've been putting up with symptoms for 10 years or 15 years and you think that's normal, what's 40 days? I mean, what is 1 menstrual cycle? I mean, come on, what is even 3 menstrual cycles? And, it is so phenomenal. And then the next time you do it, you get those same results so much quicker. The first time you did it, if you do a gold standard elimination, the first time you do it, it's going to be mind-blowing and maybe, quite groundbreaking and a big shift for you. But if you're doing that every year, your body knows what to expect, and the body will reset so much more quickly the next time you do it. And it's profound, isn't it? And can you imagine never doing this work, and then you do it for the first time, you think, oh my goodness, and you go for your first colonic, or you go for your first, liver cleanse, or, or castor oil packing, or the combination of all of that, and you think, oh my God, this is crazy. Or your first juice fast, right? But then you do it, like, if you get into the habit of doing it annually, or I love seasonal, like the autumn equinox, or just before winter, just after summer sort of time frame, or after holiday season or something. For me, it was always the end of the seasons, where you're traveling around, doing lots of festivals, picking up things as we go in terms of parasites, spores, flukes, because we are anyway. And just, having that seasonal cleanse, wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, like the minute we start to tie in with all these things that are just part of the natural world. So it's, in summers, we're supposed to be eating a little bit more sugar and all the beautiful fruits that are in season. And, like it's quite natural, but then we're not supposed to be eating watermelons in the middle of winter.
Definitely not in England. The watermelon is rubbish.
I can imagine. So tell me a little bit about your book. It's very specifically, you've just launched it like in the last week or something, is that right?
Yeah, I had a launch here in Foster, Tuncurry, and I had a launch in Sydney. I did have a launch in the UK a couple of months ago.
Congratulations.
Really, it's an essential read for women looking to maintain good gut health and to lead a healthier and more balanced life. It is ideally for women over 40 navigating anything that life throws in their way. So I do talk a lot about energy and sleep and hormones, but particularly the gut.
Yeah.
But it's really 3 books in one, because there are case studies, but there's also a lot of recipes, so 139 recipes that are designed to nourish your body and your life. So they're all color recipes. So there's a lot of beautiful, inspiring pictures in there.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a go-to guide really for a healthy, balanced life.
Yeah.
So it would make an ideal gift for your sister or your cousin or your mum or your whoever. But yeah, it's 300 pages, and it's taken me 7 years. Now, why it took me so long, I think, well, I was navigating the COVID and the homeschooling and the settling down and, just pivoting my business. But what I was also doing in that time was crafting the programs, like running the programs as one-to-one, running them as group programs, online, in person, in my kitchen.
Yeah.
To prove that it'll work. So that's why there's quite a lot of case studies in there as well, of what women did and what the changes that they made, and the benefits that they experienced, and
Yeah.
what really started to come through again and again and again were the key changes, the key things that were coming out in terms of hormones, in terms of stress, in terms of sleep, in terms of the gut improvements that we can make.
Yeah.
And the things that really worked. So the book's packed with those.
And you've obviously written it while you've been in the thick of it.
Yes, I know.
You know,
Menopausal mum of 2 young teenage boys. It was like, yeah, okay. But putting it to the test, like definitely from my own health transformation, like drawing on the parasite cleanse and the gut healing work that I did on my own, myself and with my kinesiologist. And then also putting that same sort of protocol to the test for my own menopause. So, because what I see is all the symptoms of a congested liver, all the symptoms of parasites, and all the symptoms of perimenopause and menopause, guess what? They're pretty much all the same. So if you're struggling with menopause, you may well have a parasite. Or if you're struggling with menopause, you may well have a congested liver, or both. And so doing the work on the gut is so important.
Amazing.
So yeah, there is a liver cleanse and there is a parasite cleanse, and because we're all going to have some dysbiosis. We can't get to the age of 45, 50 and not have some dysbiosis. We live in our microbiome. We are the microbiome of our family, our house, our garden.
Yeah. The
toxins in our environment in which we live, they're all impacting our microbiome. So, we've got work to do.
And I've really enjoyed in the last year, I've been, following a few women. There's been 3 women that have all been sort of 100 and 102, and their stories, and, Iris Apfel that just passed away at the beginning of March. She's fabulous. But, we're halfway through our lives. We're just at this point where we've got this whole other chapter in front of us. Shouldn't be this picture of a inevitable decline. We've got this fabulous trajectory in front of us of, potentially starting a whole new career, all sorts of different things that we can do if our health is vibrant and great. So it's, the idea of not really getting on top of all this stuff doesn't make sense. It doesn't
Absolutely. And that's what I want from, women to have a really positive experience in this phase of their life. It doesn't have to be one of bloating, exhaustion, and accidental weight gain. It can be really positive, vibrant, energetic, feeling amazing life.
Yeah. So many areas like this. I've talked about my experience of before I had my first child, and you get directed to listen to these stories, and there is just the doom and gloom and everything that can go wrong, and oh my gosh, wrap yourself in bubble wrap and never go out and don't eat this, and it's just, the fear is awful. And I think the same thing happened in the menopausal world. It's like there's so much conversation about everything that's awful and dreaded, and it's going to be, So we've got to be surrounded by people and talking to people that are like, no, it's going to be fine. It's going to be okay. You know, these are the things we can do, and you can get through this, and it's just life is going to be great. So as much as we can surround ourselves with people that are having these conversations and living the living proof of this works, this is the conversation that I want to be leaning into. It's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I think for me, I think there's one thing to add. The majority of my menopause symptoms were in my head. And what I mean by that was that it was around self-esteem,
Yeah.
confidence,
Yeah.
anxiety, and it just happened to coincide with pivoting my business and the COVID reality and the homeschooling of the kids and all the stresses and strains and aging parents and caring for my mother-in-law who's just recently passed away. And, that sandwich generation where suddenly there was just so much overwhelm. And I really had to, again, look at redesigning my life to minimize that stress and focus on self-care.
Yeah.
And know that I had to be sober. I had to, I really had to look long and hard at and not drinking through any of the lockdowns. I just thought I cannot justify it. And that anxiety and thinking, wow, I've been in such a situation of chronic stress for quite some time, like living in 2 countries with 2 teenage boys and, like go, that I knew that my menopause years had to start looking a bit differently. So prioritizing self-care and really early to bed. Like that's my number one thing, like no alcohol, really early to bed. 9:30, I'm done. Like I love my early mornings. And then thinking about in terms of supplements, what I needed for my brain health, the cognitive function. So the adaptogens, the magnesium, rhodiola, cordyceps, lion's mane, ashwagandha, my B vitamins, magnesium, like get my brain health, and 5-HTP to help with the anxiety, because it was, in January 2021, 6th of January 2021, I had a panic attack.
Right.
We were going into the 3rd lockdown, like they announced in the UK that we were going to have another lockdown, and it was the longest lockdown. But we didn't think the schools were going to close, and they said no, we're going to close the schools for 3 months, and it was just like, and it's winter, and of course my vitamin D, and I'm like, I'm an Aussie, and I was like, oh my god, and I had this panic attack, and I really have had to nurture and learn to nourish my adrenals, because ladies, look, we know that if you've been under chronic stress for a long time and when your estrogen, your progesterone's gone pretty much on the floor, it's the adrenals and the thyroid that's going to pick up the slack. So that's where my focus had to be, was to really support the adrenals and nourish that central nervous system and the HPA axis and work out how to do that. So brain health, reduce inflammation, good omegas, and sleep, nourish, and lots of meditation, tapping, and just slow everything down. I couldn't be all things to all people running around like a lunatic anymore.
And I think it's, I think we get to look at it like another chapter. It's not supposed to be the same as being in our 30s or our 40s.
Definitely not.
We get to look at it as another chapter. If we break our life up into these chapters, this is a new chapter. And there's so many ways of looking at that can make it feel like a really positive, amazing chapter. But yeah, it gets to be different. My early nights are precious to me as well, and being a morning person and watching sunrises and
the best.
Exactly. And the other thing that was absolutely changing for me, because similarly I went into a very downward spiral during COVID, got caught up listening to the news, which I hadn't done for years, and things that were just not my normal, that absolutely pulled me off course. And meditation was the thing that I talked about forever. It was too busy to do, and finally I had time and no excuse, and it was the thing that made an enormous difference to my nervous system and ability to just stay calm and manage things. So yeah, there were in all of the adversities and all the hard bits and all the struggles, there's always a gift. There's always something that comes out of it that we needed to learn.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, my yoga nidra and the tapping and all that sort of thing has come to the fore really.
Yeah.
The early mornings and just seeing that sunrise and doing some tai chi and just slowing things down has been really essential.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So if I was to open a magic funnel and pour millions or $1 billion in, what would be the thing that you would just pour money into? What's the change you want to see in the world?
It's a real difficult one because I'm such a traveler at heart. And I personally, I want to keep traveling, and I know that that's a difficult choice because I just think, the climate is an issue.
Yeah.
But I mean, what if there was no menopausal struggle? What if, reaching out to as many people, as many women as possible to end that struggle? And that may not be through the traveling that I was doing before, but yeah, for women to really to embrace this phase of their life and to think, well, yeah, it can be a positive experience. But how, to reach as many women as possible. But part of me just wants to keep traveling, but just more retreats and more things like this, I think, that are online that give people access to community and inspiration, where we can explore ways to improve and not have that struggle.
Yeah. Even with all my background and everything that I knew, and I'm the youngest of 3 girls, and with my mother, I had no idea what perimenopause was. It hit me like these terrible flooding periods. I was like, what is going on? It just was never a conversation in my world. My friends weren't talking about it. It was like this silent thing. And then all of a sudden I was looking around going, so it's, perimenopause is something that is, once again, is a fairly recent thing that is, it's just, I was blindsided by it. It's interesting. So if we can, raising awareness around that, and just that, it's almost like a conversation that happens before girls get their periods, for girls that are lucky, have that sort of preparation and understanding of what's coming. So it's just a natural progression. We need to have that before perimenopause.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what does a blooming, beautiful life look like to you?
Peace and serenity and sunrises and calm and freedom, life without struggle. That's what I think. That's what I am focused on the most in my life now.
Yeah.
And joy in the moment, joy in the little things, joy in, just, it's such precious time, gosh, in the last week, 5 of my friends have parted this earth, and I just think it is such precious time, and it's just to feel that joy and that peace. And I think that comes from like that joy within, when you notice that, but you feel that the enrichment of the soul that comes from a place of joy, and not having to rush to be anywhere else. I think that that's been my whole life, where I've wanted to do it all, be it all, have it all, see it all, everything. And now I'm just settling for watching the dolphins at sunrise. Like, it's there, isn't it? It's in that moment. So more moments like that, magical moments, I think.
Yeah, I learned a fabulous word that I'm a lover of language, and a year ago or something, I learned the word plentitude. I don't know if you've ever come across that before, but plentitude is that, like seeing a sunrise and everything else just melts away. It's just this like,
yeah, being in awe of that and just really feeling it in our cells, in our deep in our cells, that connection. whether it's a spiritual connection, a divine connection, that just pure joy, you know, it's wonderful.
So good. So for the women that want to find your book, Nourish Your Gut for a Positive Menopause, it's on Amazon and easily found everywhere. Where do they go?
Yeah, it is on Amazon. When you go into Amazon, though, you have to go into books first, because Amazon has a gazillion, trillion, billion products in there, right? So if you just typed Nourish Your Gut for a Positive Menopause into Amazon without going into books first, you will not find it.
Okay.
You will find it on my website, TrishTucker-May.com.
Okay.
Slightly cheaper on my website than Amazon. I don't get to control the Amazon prices worldwide. But if you are on Amazon, make sure you go into the book section and then you will search it up, because obviously there's a gazillion trillion books in there as well. So, yeah, probably best but via my website. Then you'll know that, you know, you're connected, and I can stay in touch with you as well.
Fantastic. I'll stick a link in the Facebook group under this interview so people can find it easily, just to your website, and then they can look at everything else fabulous that you're doing in the world. Thank you so much for being with us, Trish. It's been
Thank you.
a lovely conversation.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, beautiful women, that is it from us this evening. We've got one more interview tomorrow morning, and then we're going to have a little break for the weekend, and we'll be back again next week. So please join me live tomorrow morning. If you've got feedback or comments or questions for Trish, please don't hesitate to leave them under this interview in the Facebook group. And I'm sure somewhere between here and going back to England, or, you know, you might have a chance to get in and connect with people. All right, beautiful women, that's it from us this evening. So much love, and bye for now.
Thank you.